What's up guys, welcome back to the channel here. Okay, so on today's video, it's probably going to be a little bit of a shorter video, but I just want to go over a little project I'm working on here today on this beautiful Sunday morning. I'm working on the intercooler duct for the 240 there. Let me flip the camera around here real quick. Alright, so I'm working on this intercooler duct that I built for the car here just in the last couple of weeks. I wish I had started my channel before I built that so I could actually do a build video on that duct because it was kind of fun, but alas, here we are. So the intercooler duct is built, but the issue here is this duct needs to be sealed on the inside on all four corners so that the air that gets funneled in here is forced to go through the core. So I'm sure a lot of you guys know this, but I just learned about intercoolers and ducting this year. I learned quite a bit about them. And the interesting issue that I have noticed with a lot of cars, almost every car you see, modified, turbo project type cars like this, you'll see they'll hang a giant intercooler in the front, and that's cool. You want a big intercooler, but almost inevitably nobody has a duct on their intercooler. Like, it is so rare to see a duct on an intercooler. It's pretty fascinating how nobody runs one. I think nobody understands the importance of it or cares. Maybe they just don't need the duct, but in my situation I'm running a pretty small intercooler core. As you can see, that thing is actually only about 15 inches wide by about 8 inches tall. It is 3.5 inches thick, and that's nice, but it's not a lot of surface area there. It had to be that way to fit in between the headlights and to clear everything. I didn't have a lot of options on size with this bumper, so it really restricted what I could fit in there. So I got with Bell Intercoolers down in Texas, and I told them what engine I'm running, what boost I'm running, and what horsepower I want to make. And I said basically, hey, I'm running a turbo V8 and I want to make 800 horsepower to the tires. Please tell me what size intercooler I need. And believe it or not, this is the size they said will do the job, even though it seems small. And so I double checked with them a couple times to make sure that we were on the same page, and they said, yeah, for sure, that's the right size core. So I got the core and have the intakes made and have it fit into the chassis now. But the thing about intercoolers is they're rated to work under kind of like ideal situations. They're not rated to work if you have a bumper covering half the intercooler core, or if all the air that's hitting the core is just bouncing off and spinning around and slipping out the sides or underneath. They're rated to work in kind of an ideal scenario. So the job of the car owner is to make this scenario as ideal as they can if they want to get the most out of the part. And since I'm running not a huge core, it really needs to be an ideal situation. If I had a core that was twice that wide, I probably could get by with no duct whatsoever, because I would just be overkill on surface area, and that would save me. But since I'm not overkill on surface area, I have to make sure everything is working right and make sure I give this intercooler every chance it can get to actually function, because intake air temps are super critical. You make a lot more power when you get colder air in the engine, and everything runs safer. You get less detonation, you don't break your pistons, all sorts of benefits from safety to horsepower. So intercooling is super critical, and so I want to make mine work well, so I committed to make a duct, and that's what I've got here. But the thing about a duct is they only work if you seal them up, because the whole principle here is not, the duct isn't a funnel. I always thought ducting was essentially you're making a funnel to feed scoop as much air to the intercooler as possible. Well, that's not actually true. When it comes to the aerodynamics of it, the duct is not exactly a funnel. It's almost the opposite of a funnel. In fact, you can have the mouth of the duct be smaller than the face of the cooler you're trying to duct to. It can be substantially smaller. It can be as small as about a quarter of the size of the face of the intercooler. So instead of a funnel, you've got a reverse funnel. You've got a funnel flipped around backwards, which is exactly what I've got going on here. I have about 4 inches here, but the face of the cooler is about 8 inches. So it's actually a funnel flipped backwards. And the reason that works is because it's not about funneling a massive amount of air to the core. It's about getting the appropriate amount of air through the core. And that's the big kind of mind shift I had to have on that, was you're not trying to get a lot of air to the core, you're trying to get air through the core. And the duct, when it's small on the inlet and big on the outlet, it gets as much air as it can get through the inlet, but then that air can't basically pile up and spin up and spill out the edges because it's hitting that funnel wall. So you're actually trapping the air in there, and then the air pressure holds it on the core as long as you don't have big gaps like this right here. So these gaps around the edges absolutely have to be sealed for this to work best, so that all the air that does make it through the mouth stays in there and has to go through the fins and can't slip out through those corners and edges. So I'm going to seal up that duct, and that's what we're going to do on the video today. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about intercooling and some of the things I've learned about it, because I just find it fascinating. I think it's awesome to learn about this kind of stuff and figure out how it all really works, and figure out basically where I'm wrong in my thinking. And a lot of this stuff is really counterintuitive. You think you know what's going to work, and then physics kind of slaps you in the face, and you find out later that smart people that have gone before you have figured out a lot of things and can teach you a lot. And I'm always fascinated when I learn how something works whenever it works the exact opposite of how I thought it would work. I thought you would want a funnel scooping air to the core. You actually want that funnel flipped around backwards. That's pretty neat. And then the thought of getting air to the cooler is not what you want to do. You want to get air through the cooler, and that's a completely different mindset and a completely different approach. So let's get this thing sealed up and see how it goes. Okay, so here is the duct on the bench. You can get a good look at it here. Here's the inlet, and you can see how it funnels outward to the core. And then I bent it up so that there would be a flange here and a flange here. I did that because I knew I wanted to stick some foam to it, so I would have a surface there and there for some foam. That didn't work out on these edges, so I'm gonna have to do something a little bit different on those. But that's what we got there. So I keep a box like this of foam scraps around all the time. It's super useful, just stuff I have accumulated over the years. So I'm gonna just fish through here and find some good foam. And a lot of this foam I have actually has adhesive on the back, so you peel and stick kind of a thing. So that's super handy. I really don't know how I've accumulated so much of that stuff over the years, but I always save it when I get it. So I'm gonna find some of it that's gonna work just great, and we're gonna seal this thing up. Okay, so I have decided that I'm going to paint this thing black, make it stand out a little bit less in the mouth of the car, because it is a little bit of a big, you could say kind of ugly piece maybe, and that's okay. But I'm going to scuff it up, clean it up, and flat black it to make it look a little bit sleeker. I'm just going to use some scrap paint I got laying around, so let's get her done. Just going to go over it with some 80 grit, give it a little bit of a texture for the paint to stick to. Okay, so you can see the foam that I've got here. This is actually just stuff from like Lowe's or Home Depot, weather stripping, and I've just put a piece across here where I have a flange, and another piece across here where I have a flange, and then these two edges here, I don't have a flange on those, so I'm actually going to put a piece of foam inside. It's going to be hard to describe it, so I'll just show you when I get to do it, and you'll understand what I'm doing. But there's those right there, and I got it all painted up nice and black. Looks pretty sharp. I'm glad I painted it. It's going to look a lot better, I think. So now I'm going to put it on the car and add the two inner pieces of foam, and she'll be all sealed up. Okay, so here's how it looks with the foam installed on the vertical sections there. Got a little gap in the top corner, but I think we did good enough. So that piece there will seal that edge. Used a bigger piece here because I had a bigger gap over here. Sealed all the way to the top there. And then on the bottom, you can kind of see the foam poking out right there. It seals all the way across the core. All the way across. You can see it kind of poking out in this corner. And then the top piece, you really can't see, but it's up in there, right up in the corner, sealing across the top of the core. So there we go. The duct is basically done. I think I'm going to lower it down to the ground now and have a look at how it looks on the ground with it being painted black. I think it actually looks pretty sick so far. So I'll lower it down now and give you guys a look, and then we'll be done. Alright, so here's how it looks down on the ground. And I'm really glad I painted that duct black. It looks way better black than it looked raw metal. Yeah, it looks 10 times better. Looks pretty sick, I think. Hopefully it works well, that's the point. I'm not sure I'm going to leave that duct on there permanently, but I did want to build it for the experience of building it and for the testing to see if the IATs are good or not. So if it works great and the air temp is good, I can always build a better looking one. I can make one out of fiberglass. But I just wanted to test the whole theory of having the duct in place and be able to really test that intercooler in an ideal scenario and see if the intercooler is up to the job. But yeah, so far I think that looks pretty sick. Alright guys, I will see you on the next one.